I'm Mike from MTF Services. Today I'm going to show you how to carry out a conversion of the Fuji MK lenses. These lenses are really nice, lightweight. They cover Super 35 and they've been very popular. There are two focal lengths available in 18 to 55 and 50 to 135. We do a number of different conversions so that they can be used on different cameras. The lenses natively come as Sony E-mounts, but what we've done is we've designed a number of different mounts so that they can be used on different cameras. The first one we did was a Micro Four Third mount, and then more recently we've done the Canon RF mount, so they can be used on Canon R series cameras, and also the Red Komodo. We also made Leica L mounts, and with that they can be used on the Lumix S series cameras, and also the new Blackmagic 6K cinema camera. Today what we are going to be showing is a new conversion which is for Nikon Z mounts. There are, you know, a few Z mount cameras now, and the latest version is, you know, proving to be a bit popular, so we thought it'd be a good idea to do that. Now there is an adapter which allows you to adapt from E mounts to Z mounts, but it's a bit flimsy. I mean, it's because the flange back distances are so similar. The adapter ends up being really thin, and we have had customers saying that they've tried that and they're not happy with them, so they were looking for something a bit more semi-permanent. Now these conversions, they really ought to be carried out by someone who's fairly confident. I mean, it doesn't have to be in a lens tech workshop, but somebody that knows how to handle a screwdriver and has some decent tools should be able to do this without any problem. What you've really got to do is make sure you've got plenty of time, because you don't want to rush. You know, have a tea or a coffee standing by, or a beer even, and just take your time. So yeah, so here we go. I'm going to take off the E mount now. So the first thing to do is to remove the cap. Now using a screwdriver which is not a posi drive but just a crosshead. Now we use a screwdriver that we get from Canon, but if you don't have that, then a decent brand that I would recommend would be the Wearer. They make quite nice tools, and they're good quality. Because what you don't want to do is round off the heads, because the screws are quite fragile. Well, not fragile, but they're quite small, and the heads are quite small. So that, you know, if you round off the heads, and you could have a bit of a problem. Now the trick to undoing these small screws, I mean, it's not rocket science, but there is a technique to it, because sometimes the manufacturers do use a little bit of Loctite of some kind. So what you need to do is position the screwdriver in the head and actually give it a fair amount of downward pressure, because it's the downward pressure that will allow you to turn the screw without stripping the head. Now if it's tight, don't try and do it all in one go. Just sort of, you know, just nudge it round slowly until the Loctite or whatever they've used breaks. So like so. Right, so that's 4 screws undone. Gently lift the mount. The mount should come out, but if the mount doesn't come out, you may find that the mount is being held in by another couple of screws inside the collar, and they're set screws, so they need an Allen key, and actually it's a very small Allen key. I've got this set that I got from RS, and the key is the second to the small, is the next one up from the smallest, which is actually 1mm. So you'll find that there are set screws in 4 of these holes. So if you undo those, then that will release the mounts, because what's happening is the set screw can be pressed up against this section of the mount here, which is used to centralise. So if it doesn't come out, undo those set screws and then it should pop out. The other thing to note is you'll find that there'll be shims under the mount. In this case there are 2. Now obviously don't lose these, because you will need to put those back in when the Nikon mount is put on. Now the other thing that we need to do is remove this green collar, because of the flange back distances of between E mount and Nikon Z mounts. It meant that we couldn't get the Z mount in the correct position without removing the collar. So to do that, you'll find that there is another set of holes which are larger, and there'll be 3 of those, and inside those is a normal screw with a crosshead. And it's these 3 screws that actually hold the collar on. Sorry, that one. Obviously don't lose those screws, because we'll be using those to put our collar on. So once those are taken out, then that should lift straight off. Put that aside, because you'll probably at some point want to convert it back to E-mounts. Now what you may find is there may be a little bit of a residue of some kind of Loctite. So if there is, just get a cloth with a little bit of solvent on it and just run it round the outside. Obviously making sure you don't go anywhere near the actual lens. Now the next thing we need to do is to put our collar on. What we've had to do to make the whole system work is to fix the collar on as if it was the mount, because the Nikon mount will actually screw into this collar. So we're going to have to put the shims back in, but under the collar. Now on the shims there are some holes. I don't know what those holes are for because they don't do anything. But it's the cutouts around the edge, the 4 cutouts. That's where the fixing screws pass through. So you need to line those up with the screw holes on the collar. Now the other thing to do is to get the lens orientation correct in relation to the collar. So we've got a dimple on the collar, and on the lens, on the left hand side we've got the focus marks, focus and iris witness marks. So what we want to do is line up the dimple with those marks, and the easiest way is to actually like so. So in theory now, those fixing holes should be lined up with the cutouts in the shim, and using the same screws that we took out of the E-mounts, we fix the collar in place. You'll find there's 2 sets of holes in the collar, and the one we use to fix the collar to the lens are the holes that have the counter bore so that the head sits flush. So that will be the inner set of holes. Let's try with some different glasses. Okay, so now the collar is in place, we can just check that the back focus mechanism is still free. Because what we don't want to do is for it to pinch that. So that moves fine. The macro, yeah, that moves fine. Clicks back into place. So that's all good. Right, so orientation of the lens, again, you know, we have the lens as if we're looking at it from behind. So we're underneath the lens. So now it's time to fit the actual mount. But before we do that, if I just show you the mount itself. Now, this is a prototype. This is the very first one. So obviously none of these parts have been anodized. The collar and the baffle are aluminium, but they will be anodized. The baffle will be anodized black. The collar, I haven't decided yet. It will be probably blue because that's the colour we normally use. But the one thing we have done, oh, and by the way, obviously the mount itself is stainless steel. That's what we normally use. What I've also done is designed it so that it actually uses the inner baffle from the original E-mounts mount. Now that's actually held in with 3 screws at the back. So if we just undo those, keep these screws because we're going to reuse them. Right, so once those 3 screws are undone, then you'll find that it pops out from the mounts quite easily. So put the mount aside, and on the back of our baffle are the corresponding holes, and once those are on, you'll see that it blends nicely. So if you can imagine, once this is anodized black, it will be indistinguishable from the Fuji baffle. Right, so now the baffle is on, we can fit the actual mount. So we're fitting the mount to the collar because the collar has another set of holes. Now the screws which we will supply with the kit are slightly bigger than the screws that are used to hold on the mount. But you should be able to tell the difference fairly easily, because the screws that hold on the mount are only 1.7. They're a bit of an odd size, whereas we use standard 2mm screws. Now orientation, looking at the lens from behind, the location slot of the Nikon mount should be at 9 o'clock. So if we just pop that on there, that should just drop in nice and easily. Now if you find that the mount doesn't drop in easily, if it feels like there's something stopping it from going all the way down, you may find that the shim may be encroaching past the inner diameter. So what you can do is just loosen the screws off slightly. That'll allow the shim to move a little bit. Then you should be able to drop the mount on. That goes on now. Take the mount back on and retighten those screws. So now, hopefully, that should just drop straight on, and it does. So again, using the 2mm screws, which are slightly larger than the ones that were originally on the mount, and there's 4 of them, by the way. Tighten those up. So in theory that should be done. The collar is on, the mount is on, the shims are in place, the back focus is still working as normal. Now you will need to check double check the back focus, just to make sure your lens is pulling focus and staying in focus as you zoom. But other than that's just about it. Apart from if you feel that the mount isn't centered correctly, if you do a zoom and find the image drifts slightly, then you still have the option of centering the mount. So what you would need to do is undo the 4 screws, not completely, just loosen them off, and then accessing the set screws through the larger hole with the 1mm Allen key, you should be able to nudge the mount so it's centered, and then once you're happy with the centering, do the screws back up. The kit comes with a mount. Nikon fits on the wrong way round compared to the other lenses, so the mount fits on anti-clockwise. So that's it. So that's the Fuji MK lens converted to Nikon Z mount.